Good afternoon, all. We are Team 8, Farm to Table. I'm Amin,
And I'm Divya.
and we'll be talking about a project this summer.
So, we've been working with Root Causes, a Duke affiliated student group that aims to address social determinants of health through collaboration with the Duke Health System and other local organizations. Within Root Causes, we've been working with the Fresh Produce Program, which aims to improve community health by addressing food insecurity and improving the local food system through innovation, partnership development, and research. Each week, the Fresh Produce Program collects locally sourced foods and delivers bags of this food to their beneficiaries.
Founded in 2017, Root Causes is still in the process of exploring various growth trajectories, both horizontally and vertically. So, when we began working with Root Causes, our first task was exploring and defining what our project for the summer would be.
We started off by acquainting ourselves with the organization, its structure, and its goals. We wanted our project to further FPP's goal of making the local food and health systems more equitable, sustainable, and integrated.
To this end, we started exploring our problem statement through various stakeholder meetings. We met with Durham County Social Services, the Food Bank of Eastern and Central North Carolina, and Meals for Families, as well as other members of Root Causes. We also simultaneously looked at the data availability and feasibility of the various project ideas that came up. Finally, after a lot of deliberation, we narrowed down to the problem statement of identifying and analyzing potential food distribution hubs for root causes.
From our meetings, we realized that understanding how and where the services should be diversified was crucial so that organizations could reach underserved populations. This seemed especially important in our case as FPP is considering transitioning from its current doorstep delivery model to a hub-based model to expand its reach. FPP is also planning to collaborate with other public organizations who already have some infrastructure in place to help with the food distribution. Thus, we decided to identify potential distribution sites and determine which of these could be optimal locations for expansion.
After deciding upon the topic, we then collected data from Food Access Research Atlas by United States Department of Agriculture, Durham Neighborhood Compass by DataWorks NC, American Community Survey, and Root Causes. We clean and pre-process this data to get standardized geo-identified information at the census tract level.
We then analyzed the data for the present service area of Durham County by exploring a few different variables, including poverty rate, the share of the population with low access, the share of the population that are children and seniors in low access areas, share of households receiving SNAP benefits, and share of households without vehicle access in low access areas.
We also further identified the most suitable locations from among the candidate locations provided by root causes through the ArcGIS location allocation tool. In doing so, we tried maximizing the reach of our services such that most beneficiaries would be placed within a 5-minute drive from the hubs. We also tried finding the minimum number of hubs required to do so.
So when exploring the previously mentioned variables and potential areas for expansion in Durham County, we found that the census tracts in central Durham show higher poverty rates and so are more likely to be food insecure. However, the proportion of kids and seniors in low access areas is higher along the boundary of Durham County, suggesting that those areas might require different types of assistance.
We also found that a large number of beneficiaries are located in areas where more people are likely to have vehicle access, suggesting that there may be a possibility of a useful hub-based delivery model in Durham. Also, for the given population, we found that a minimum of 18 hubs is required for beneficiaries to be located within a 5-minute drive.
So for general use, we then developed a web app with two primary components. One, identifying optimal hubs, where the user can upload a list of beneficiary and candidate hub addresses. And two, providing insights into the neighborhood performances on important metrics related to food insecurity, so as to help users understand distribution requirements and improve reach overall.
This would be helpful to root causes or any related organization in a number of ways. It can aid maximal utilization of resources by helping reach a larger beneficiary pool even when operating with fewer resources. It can also help in identifying potential partners and creating a more integrated network. Besides, it is generalizable. It can be used by any related organization anywhere in North Carolina.
Given the constraints of time, we could only create a prototype of the tool and web app. However, moving forward, there are some potential next steps, such as customizing the tool to take into account more factors like walking time and walkability of the neighborhood, and to cater to beneficiaries who may be unable to travel to one of the distribution hubs. Thank you all for listening. We'd be happy to take any questions or show a demo of the web app prototype.
That's really cool. I would love to see a demo.
Let me share.
While Divya gets that set up, Willis and I, who's with us, were the project leaders. And I just want to say that Divya and Amin have done a phenomenal job, both with the product that they're sharing right now, but also in learning about our program, really showing up physically to learn about what we're doing and meet with a lot of our community partners to figure out not only what our needs are, but really the context of where we work and how we can be a better asset to the Durham County. And also, I just want to say, as a past graduate of the Data Plus program, I really appreciate that you guys have really lived up to this, and that, and also for the folks running the Data Plus program, that you've made this possible. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And take it away, Divya.
Thanks, Esco. So this is what our web app looks like currently. And so basically we have a few, like the variables that we mentioned are kind of hard coded in here so that you can see the values for each census tract in North Carolina. And you can toggle each of the layers to see how the distribution looks for each of them. And we also inbuilt these infographics that basically just show the average of each of these variables for each county. And here, all the counties are organized in alphabetical order so that you can just zoom into the one that you want to find. And once you hover over them, it also highlights that on the map to see where that county is located. And so then for the actual tool itself, there's one area where you can actually upload your own files. And so say we upload like the addresses of the patients that we want to deliver to, that one gets added as its own layer. And you can also see, if you click on one of these, you can kind of see whatever was in the data set. So if you include their name and like some other information about them and their address. And you can also add a separate file for the actual candidate hubs that you want to include. And these will also show the name and address of those hubs. And then this is where you actually run the tool. And so you'll upload, the facilities are the candidate hubs and demand points are the people that you're trying to serve. And say we want to find 10 facilities with the maximum driving time of 5 minutes. When you run this, and it'll take a moment, but it basically outputs this as its own layer. It's like executing. But yeah, while it's running, like we mentioned during the presentation, we've set the tool to the maximize coverage, which means like we want to find the minimum number of locations, or well, in this case, you just choose how many locations you want to have, and then it'll choose the ones that reach the largest number of beneficiaries. So then this is what the output looks like. And so each of these green diamonds is one of the hubs that was chosen as the
Optimal hub.
As the optimal hub, yes. And then all these purple or bluish dots are the beneficiaries who have been assigned to that hub within like a 5-minute driving distance. And so yeah, that's basically how it works. And you're able to export each of these files to your own, like to just download them, and then you can see the data separately there as well.
That's really cool. Genevieve, did you have a question?
I did. Well, firstly, I just want to say this is like amazing. Like I have such an interest in food insecurity, and like this is so amazing that you guys are able to use ArcGIS in order to use it as its software, but also build on top of it a web app. And like, yeah, that's amazing. So I was just wondering, what was the process like for building your web app is. Like, did you build it off top of the foundational code that ArcGIS already has? And yeah, do you have what was you guys's main process, and what type of code did you have to use in order to build your web app?
So at the moment, we were pretty constrained in time. So there's something called the web app builder with ArcGIS, the developer version of it. So we basically used tools that were already built in. We were also trying to do some customization with JavaScript, but we couldn't do that right now. But as of now, I think there are just inbuilt tools and we've used them to build this app.
Yeah, so essentially we started off working in ArcGIS Pro with each of these tools, and then they're called widgets, and you can basically just add them to the web app and then choose which of the inputs and outputs you want to actually have as options on here. And you're able to customize like how it looks when it outputs the assignments and stuff like that. And so yeah, this is like the first version of it, because we spent a good chunk of the program figuring out the problem statement and then figuring out what tools we could actually use. And so it was only like the last week or 2 weeks that we actually got to put everything onto a web app for root causes to actually interact with and use.
It's still amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here.
Well, one curiosity I have is there's these red points that look like they would naturally go to these green points, and then they don't. Do they remain undersigned or something, or is there some type of stochasticity in the algorithm?
So the red points are actually other candidate hubs that just weren't chosen. And these yellow dots are patients that were outside like a 5-minute driving time of the chosen hubs.
Got it. Cool.
And we also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was curious. Is it really driving time, or is it like just the crow's flies distance? And if it is driving time, I'm really curious about how you did that.
It is driving time, I guess. ArcGIS already allows for it, so we just use that up right now. It has some inbuilt mechanism to calculate that.
Cool. Okay, gotcha.
And I just wanted to add, this is going to be super useful to us for a couple of reasons. But one is, we've traditionally relied on volunteer drivers, and we have a route planning algorithm that's been wonderful to make those routes efficient. But there are only so many volunteers, and the number of patients that we need to feed keeps on going up. And we've tried to be more thoughtful in how we attract volunteers, but for the most part, our understanding is that there's kind of a set limit of how many people are capable to volunteer for us. So we're trying to think of what's another way of unearthing a different way to do deliveries or enabling people to help us in this. And so this hub and spoke model could be a really great way for us to identify. In this case, a lot of these hubs are churches, and we could go to the church and say, hey, you have a set location. You probably have some interest in helping this mission that we have. Would you mind, just having someone kind of stand at church on a Sunday? We'll deliver the food to you, and you just need to wait for these 10 or so folks to come to you, or maybe there are folks at your church who can take the food these last 5 minutes on their way home or something like that. And on top of that, there's this hub finding tool, but also the other tool that they created that it looks at counties, but it also goes down to the census tracts. We can also say, on top of saying, could you support us with these 10 people in your neighborhood? We can also give them more information about their neighborhood and say, hey, food insecurity is a huge problem in your neighborhood. We would love to have you partner with us, and we will supply the food. We'll supply, the people that you can help. All we need for you to do is basically just have your door open. And hopefully we can make a pretty comprehensive pitch to find a way to make this a lot easier for us to get food to people. Because traditionally right now we're relying on however many volunteers we can get to deliver to about 150 people each Saturday. And we're kind of capped at 150 because that's however many drivers we can find to satisfy that need. It would be much larger if we had an easier way to get the food out to people. So what Amin and Divya have enabled is maybe we could serve 300 people And instead of needing so many more drivers, now we just have one truck that goes to 10 different hubs, drops the food off, and then maybe we'll have a handful of drivers that go and support these folks that are outside of the radius of these hubs, or otherwise, wouldn't be able to be supported by this hub model. But it's a really cool tool to address a really pressing problem. So kudos to them for their time and effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with Eamon and Divya early in the program, and we were just chatting about the project and everything, and thinking about, they were we were just brainstorming a little bit about where it could go, and I'm like, from that conversation to here, I'm just extremely impressed by this.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess so. One kind of natural, maybe natural follow-up question is how easy or hard. I know. So I think it makes a ton of sense. You had these potential hubs, and then you kind of searched for how could we minimize the hubs to get to everybody in this way? Like, I guess the couple questions. One, how tunable is that? Like, if you wanted to say, well, if we got one more hub, but it reduced the driving time by this, then maybe that's worth it, or so that there's that trade-off, right? And then if you didn't know the exact location of the hub, but you wanted to sort of scout for places, and you wanted to find places that would be good to scout for hubs, like how difficult would it be to extend the model towards those things?
I think those are possibilities with this location allocation tool that is like inbuilt into ArcGIS. We didn't explore that too much, but there is a way to. I remember one of the examples we were looking at had when it was trying to find hubs, instead of having specific addresses, it would have like the centroid of like a certain area or a census tract or something, and a certain weightage for like what kind of demands the patients in that area would have. And so based on that centroid point, it would just assign it to that local area, and then you'd have to find a place within the area that the tool picked out.
Got it. And then what about the balance between like driving time and maybe adding another hub, and maybe like the tensions between the costs of those two things?
I mean, so one of the things like we were trying to do is when you run this tool, it actually requires you to put in the driving time and the number of facilities you want. And so we haven't found a way for the user to be able to like only choose one of them and tell you which is the best number for, like, say you wanted a maximum driving time of 5 minutes and you just wanted to find the minimum number of facilities to reach all the patients. We weren't able to build that into this tool specifically, but we did try running like our own script to run this kind of in a loop and try out different numbers. And that's where we got, when we mentioned the 18 hubs to reach pretty much all of the patients. But that's definitely something like future steps to kind of build into the tool. And that would kind of fall into the customizing with the JavaScript widget.
Oh yeah, and just what you said. I mean, putting this into a loop and searching over a bunch of different answers and seeing what you get. I mean, already that I think that will largely answer this right away, right? Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. Other points of discussion? Anything people want to dive into or bring up to this team?
Yeah. What are your plans for the future of this application you guys have kind of made? Like, do you plan on extrapolating it to not only the fresh produce program, but also maybe other organizations? Or like, yeah, where do you guys see yourself being in, like, I guess not the supply chain, but like, you guys see yourself adding to the app, or trying to get it more out there and like market it? Or yeah, where do you guys see yourself?
I mean, so at the moment, it is very tailored towards root causes, but we have kind of been talking with a few people at the food bank who run the Kids Summer Meals program, and their needs are slightly different in that they have the resources to be able to reach the populations, but it's more of just finding where they would need to go to be able to reach people who aren't currently being served by their program. And so I think one of the things is this tool is like currently only if you have an ArcGIS account, you're able to access it. And so one of, I guess the first steps would be to kind of build it out in a separate location where you like more people will be able to access it. And I think at the moment, the layers is probably pretty helpful, like to food bank and stuff like that, just to see what areas they can plot their current food sites over the map and see like if there are certain areas that are, say, have higher poverty rate that they don't have a location in yet, that could be a potential area for them to research and see if there would be people that they could benefit. But yeah, I think we would have to tweak the location allocation a little bit more just to be able to be more generalizable. But at the moment, I think it would, like, it's still useful, just sometimes like it depends on the need of the organization. Like sometimes they have the volunteers, but just don't know where they need it. Whereas Root Causes has a more limited number of volunteers. And so they're kind of working with those constraints.
Will, you have a question?
Yeah, so really great work here. It's interesting to see what you all came up with. I think, as you know, I've been really impressed and kind of delighted by your volunteering and going in there on the Saturdays. I'm curious, I mean, you're obviously unique in that you have a place you can go and participate and learn about the data and what it means. But I'm wondering how that shaped your view of the project and your understanding, and maybe gave you energy or passion to work on it sometimes. How did that the volunteering experience influence you?
I think, first of all, it did give us meaning. Secondly, in the initial phase, we were trying to explore what problems we can actually take up. And when we went there for the first time, we kind of felt that it wasn't the routing problem that was the one of concern, but actually somewhere the supply chain. And then when we went the next time, things started evolving and we could see what the real need was, rather than going this way, that way. Like, it just made things clearer for us.
Would you mind talking a little bit about your volunteer experience? I guess just like not in terms of the relationship to your Data Plus project, but just the actual experience of going out there. And
yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty cool to be able to see how things are working in person, getting to be a part of it. So we went, I think, during one of the first couple of weeks of Data Plus, and we got to help out with actually like bagging all the foods and loading them into cars when the delivery drivers came in. And everyone was super welcoming. And I think it kind of really put things into perspective for us to be like, oh, like what we're doing actually has like a real world impact that we can physically see.
Cool. Yeah. So if folks have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or just to chime in. Otherwise, I'm gonna have them conclude with one last question of my own. So I guess the last thing I'll ask of you guys is just, could you talk a little bit about just sort of the challenges, the part of the process, just your experience in building this tool that you've built?
Yeah, I guess for me, maybe there was two things. So one, like ArcGIS was pretty new to me. I hadn't done any work really with the tool, and so just figuring out how to use that and what functionalities we had available to us was pretty interesting. And also just the problem exploration itself, in that I think at the beginning, we kind of felt like we didn't really know where this was going, but taking that time to meet with community partners and go volunteer actually gave us a lot better idea of, once we actually decided on our problem statement, it kind of gave us like more meaning and really helped us like to figure out what we wanted to be able to do with our final deliverable.
Yeah, I completely second that. The problem exploration part was like really confusing. Like I think for like 3 or 4 weeks, we were almost confused. We didn't know where we were going. So, I mean, I'm glad all that came through it. Like we were really lucky to have that opportunity too, in the sense that we could actually find what the problem was, explore the domain, explore it for root causes, and also other stakeholders. So that was one thing. The other part was like, I mean, transferring it from ArcGIS Pro to the web app was also a bit of a challenge, because customization, I mean, we absolutely have no idea on how to customize it as of now, because we have to learn all of the skills and then implement it. So that is one challenge. ArcGIS Pro is a little different from ArcGIS Web App in the sense that it allows you to play with the tools, but ArcGIS Web App doesn't do that so much. So that's one thing to think of moving forward.
Well, thanks all for a wonderful presentation. Thanks everyone for the questions and your answers. So let's give the team a round of applause as they conclude their Data Plus program for the year.